The following segment is sponsored by Daniel A. White and Associates. It does not necessarily reflect the views of WDEL or Forever Media.
The Rick Jensen Show on 101.7 FM, 1150 AM, WDEL, and streaming to your smart speaker and mobile device.
Well, it should be your opinion. I've been a very, very happy camper client of Dan White for, many, many, many years. And on the phone right now is Dan Simon, one of the professionals who works diligently to make sure that you have a really good retirement when that time comes, because that's what they do. They're financial planners, and they specialize in retirement income. So after the news at 1:30 on Wednesdays, one of these pros calls in and gives you a tip. We're heading towards the end of the year, Dan, so there's got to be a bunch of things you guys are looking at for your clients, right?
Good afternoon, Rick. How are you?
Well, sir.
Good. Yeah, always things that we need to be looking at the end of the year. Specifically today, I wanted to talk about qualified charitable distributions. We all know it's the season of giving, and time is running out to make those 2023, we call them QCDs. So you have until the end of the year, so December 31st, to make a qualified distribution, qualified charitable distribution to any cause, of course, that is willing to take it from an IRA account. So QCDs specifically apply to IRAs, SEP IRAs, simple IRAs, so long as they're not in force or currently employed. It does not apply to a 401k. It does not apply to a Roth IRA. So there are a lot of specifics when it comes to qualified charitable distributions, because essentially what it's doing is it's lowering your income tax bill by repositioning some of the retirement savings that you have. So first thing, certainly you need to make sure you're the right age to do any type of QCD. You need to be 70 and a half. It's not the year. You actually have to be 70 and a half to make a qualified charitable distribution. And again, as I mentioned, it's only allowed from IRA plans. Limit for this year, you're looking at $100,000. So if you're very philanthropically inclined or giving inclined, you can donate up to $100,000 per couple. But each spouse has to have their own IRA to contribute that $100,000 from each of their accounts.
Hey, I have a question, and I'm asking for a friend. I'm asking for a friend. So, is it legit to give $100,000 in this charitable contribution to a bona fide, nonprofit, of which you're also the executive director, making $100,000 a year?
I would probably consult your tax professional on that one, Rick.
Gotcha. Okay. Just like I said, asking for a friend.
Consult one or the other. The QCD does satisfy a required minimum distribution as well. So that's something that, I see a lot of my clients who are charitably inclined. We talk about required minimum distributions, and we usually, we want to get to that prior to Thanksgiving, just because custodians do have cutoffs for when those, distributions need to be submitted by.
Yeah.
But if the QCD is, of the amount of the required minimum distribution or in excess of it, it's going to satisfy that requirement for you. And again, it can't exceed the $100,000 limit.
Gotcha.
So, there's a lot of reasons why people go about doing it. Obviously, giving is usually the first reason. But, the law has also changed where you can split the interest of each entity that you're going to contribute to. So if you have more than one organization that you want to send money to, you're able to split it up. But the one thing I will point out, it needs to be a direct transfer. It's got to go actually from your custodian. So from Charles Schwab directly to Wounded Warriors, for example. It can't go from Schwab to Dan to Wounded Warriors.
Yeah, it's kind of like when you leave a job and you want to move that 401k into an IRA. Don't take the check. It's got to go right to the IRA, whoever's managing that, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, so it's the same thing. It goes right from your IRA to the beneficiary. You mentioned Wounded Warriors, great organization. So don't touch the money on the way over.
Exactly. It's got to go from custodian to recipient. And the other thing I'll point out, a lot of people aren't aware of this. A lot of people assume that things will just be reported. You must actually report your own QCD on your tax return. So you need to let the IRS know that you did make a charitable donation and make sure that it's reported so you're getting credit for it.
Speaking of taxes, that's what people don't understand about taxes being voluntary. They go, taxes are voluntary. I don't have to pay. No. That means that it's voluntary. You have to do the reporting. The government's not going to say, hey, we've got all the records. We're going to tell you how much to pay. So, to your point, you pretty much got to report everything, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I would think so.
That's always the best practice for sure.
You guys, you stay on top of all these details. So glad that you do. And I encourage people all the time. Talk to someone at Dan White. Dan Simon, great guy, Middletown office, smart as all get out. 888-690-8820. Doesn't charge anything to sit down and discuss the options you have. He's, full disclosure on everything. Like I said, I'm talking about you, Dan. Just be quiet. And Dan's a great guy. It always feels weird to me to talk about somebody when they're on the phone, you know what I mean? But you are a great guy and very, very knowledgeable. I enjoy all of our conversations. 888-690-8820. Now, Dan White himself has a program called On the Money, Sunday mornings at 7 a.m. And do we have any idea, the detail of what he's going to be talking about on Sunday?
Rick, one of these days I'm going to know the answer to that question, but I don't off the top of my head. I'm sure it will be relevant to the season that we're in and taxes and probably maybe an economic outlook going forward. But I would imagine it's something along
That's something. Well, look, he didn't tell me either, so I don't. No bad on you. So
keep it a secret from me.
Yeah, I know, right? But it is the end of the season, and Dan's going to have some great advice on sort of a checklist. He always does. And economic outlook. He's really, really great with that. Saved me a whole lot of money by listening to him when he shared with me his economic outlook a couple of times just before 2021. And I made some decisions. They were good ones, and I didn't lose. So it's fantastic. Dan Simon, Dan White & Associates, thanks for being on, man. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, Rick, if we don't speak.
All right. Merry Christmas.